Welcome to the Noble Ape Podcast, Ape Reality. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today I want to do a little bit of time travelling. It's been a surreal week or so, and ultimately it's mirrored a lot of the experiences that I had about a month ago with regards to the Douglas Adams text. The experiences in the past week have related to the Douglas Adams text as well, but also really all the audio associated with the Biota 2 conference. I had a bit of an epiphany this morning relating to this, where I thought to myself, really what happened in the Biota 2 conference was a whole lot of people came together, they kind of delivered their speeches, and then they went away. And this comes in part in reference to Joe Riem and my discussion in Biota Chat with regards to the two opposing archetypes. On one side, the artificial life hobbyist archetype, and on the other side, the distant hero, which in many regards represented a majority of the folk that came together at Biota 2. So, up until about this point, I have tried to reach out, communicate with, and reintegrate the folk that were at Biota 2, and over the past week, through correspondence from a particular individual, I had an epiphany that these people really didn't have it as good as the contemporary hobbyists have it, and really there's no wonder why they are not still part of the discussion associated with artificial life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what will happen with regards to the Douglas Adams text. The correspondence that I had, the individual attempted to cast quite serious aspersions with regards to my motives of developing and maintaining Biota, and I received following that some additional correspondence with one of these people's associates saying basically the same thing. It was quite surreal to me because it was in a similar time frame with the recorded chat with Joe, and it made me realise that these people had never actually listened to a Biota podcast and didn't really have a general sense of what the contemporary Biota movement was all about. One of the main emails in particular that Joe was CC'd on, he indicated just showed an amazing wave of narcissism that this individual had. And I think that's what strikes me about the Biota 2 conference. Ironically, probably 2 week ago time frame, I had an extended correspondence with Gerald de Jong discussing his experiences going to Biota 2 versus my own experiences trying to get to Biota 2. I tried on a number of occasions to get to Biota 2 in terms of actually getting a ticket or an ability to attend, and encountered nothing short of extreme difficulty in even getting basic correspondence. I feel subtly that this may be what actually happened with Will Wright as well. If you remember Bruce Damer's discussion in his Biota interview, the first Biota interview that occurred more than a year ago with Bruce Damer, he talked a little bit about Will Wright wanting to go to the second Biota conference, and perhaps people were actually stopped from going to the Biota 2 conference. And I don't think this was Bruce Damer's doing. Reflecting and discussing this with Gerald in particular, it brought back a lot of emotions and a lot of memories associated with a particular individual, and his control with regards to the Biota 2 conferences has been re-echoed in recent correspondence. And it struck me that this, and I'm speaking in riddles in part because I don't want to talk too deeply about the specifics associated with any of this, but this struck me as being so completely opposed to what the contemporary Biota project is about, and really re-emphasised these two archetypes that I'm describing. Well, at the conclusion of the chat with Joe, he and I were talking after the recording had been turned off, and I talked to him about my own experiences in some regard with the distant hero archetype, which I've editorialised in podcasts which have been removed from the feed, but related specifically for my time with people like Wozniak, and how the archetype of the distant hero, and particularly the elements of narcissism, the removal from reality, the inability to take responsibility for situations, and fundamentally the kind of sub-friend status that one could only, it's impossible to actually have any proper interactions or communicate on a similar level with these kind of people. So ultimately, these people in their personas, the way they operate these kind of things, the fact that they wrote occasionally and in the past about artificial life means nothing. They're not interested in reintegrating, they're not interested in communicating on artificial life, and really perhaps their own view is that we as artificial life enthusiasts were lucky that they ever wrote about it. And that really struck me in recent correspondence, that all the contemporary folk who are listening to this podcast, who are listening to biota.org, the 5 who are on the Facebook page associated with ape reality, these people are of a different caliber to the previous historical figures, and maybe we shouldn't even attempt or even be thinking to reintegrate these people or even really idealize these people, because ultimately the contemporary hobbyist movement, and to a certain extent the contemporary academic movement, and all the things that are going on currently, whilst not being in New Scientist, Scientific American and mainstream science or popular culture media, is actually considerably more vibrant, considerably more communicative, and considerably more alive than it has ever been in the past. It's almost a complete flip reversal in my thinking with regards to the contemporary movement versus the historical movement. We don't want the situation that occurred in the past. It's probably better that we have this ability to email each other and interact with each other as companions, as friends, as associates that are communicating on a similar level with similar interests and ultimately similar feelings about how things should progress in the future. And that's a very powerful thing. There is no real room for heroes or egos or the kind of vitriol that I've been seeing in recent days associated with these historical figures. I think we're in a much healthier place. The correspondence and the related nonsense associated with this caused me a great degree of sadness through the period, because I'd invested a substantial amount of time in trying to reintegrate a particular individual and spent a long period of time doing edits and production associated with this person. And I came to realise that part of the problem is that the Douglas Adams text is still maintained on the Biota site. I would like to see the text maintained by Douglas Adams' estate, or at least the decision of what to do with the text with them and them alone. So, in parallel to whatever else is going on, I am trying to communicate with the estate in order to establish what they want to do with the text, whether we just include a link to the Salmon of Doubt on the Biota page, whether they have a couple of sites, so maybe they could host the text on one of their sites, and that enables them to field all the related communication and discussion and all these other sites that are selling the text or packing it with ads and not containing any links back to Biota or what have you. The estate can interact with those people. I don't think it's my responsibility as editor of Biota to have interactions with any of these individuals, and ultimately I think it would cut down a great degree of the nonsense associated with the past couple of months. So that's my thinking currently. I don't want to editorialise too heavily or talk necessarily about specifics, because I don't really think it's particularly edifying naming names in these circumstances. Bar to say, my thinking has changed quite dramatically in the past few days, and particularly the epiphany I had this morning with regards to how lucky we are to have folks like Joe and Gerald and John Klein and all these kind of folk. Ken Stauffer, a long-time fan of this podcast, and Rudolph in the Netherlands, and Riddle and Pedro, and all these kind of people who are in correspondence, and many who I'm forgetting to name. It's wonderful that you're all listening and participating in some regard, and communicating occasionally, and maybe tinkering with your own stuff, or running Noble Ape, or listening to the Biota podcasts. All this is far more constructive than tens of Biota 2s. So, how does it fit into any long-term narrative? How does it change my direction and my focus with regards to things like the Biota site? I'm not sure. I'm still thinking on that. But I think it's important to say these things out there. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want to get in contact and say right on or say no, keep trying to get interviews with these historical figures, tom@nobleape.com. I have thought recently about what will happen with the t-shirts and these kind of things. And I have a couple of original manuals that are supposed to be arriving, and then my plan is to do a revamp of them and probably launch them on another publish online site. So we'll see in the near future what will happen. But as it is currently, if you email me, all you will get is a friendly email back, because I am currently in some kind of t-shirt and manual limbo as I establish, where the next Noble Ape related merchandise will be located online. Although the Cafe Press store will still maintain. In any case, tom@nobleape.com if you have anything to add or any discussion points. Thank you very much for tuning into this podcast. Look forward to you tuning into the next podcast.